All right, so now that we know our way around Maya with a camera, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can pair this with the movement tools to start moving things in our scene and building out 3D space. So I'm going to click on a cube again. If you already have yours, just keep it there. And we're going to take a look at how we can move this cube now. The way we're going to do this is through our tool panel using the various move tools. So let's go ahead and go through the first tool here, which is going to be our move tool or translate tool. So this one here, it looks like a square with the arrows sticking out the side. We can think of this as our move tool, or what we would refer to as a translate tool. Now, I'm using the term translate to correlate to what we'll see over here in our channel box. Let's go ahead and turn that on so we have access to it and we can see this in action. If you click on that move tool, your selection is going to change. And if you have your cube selected, you'll see it look like this. Now, if you click off of your cube, notice that goes away. If you click onto your cube, notice it comes back. Now, what we are seeing here is our movement gizmo. And the way this works is it is going to allow us to move along the individual axes. So let's go ahead and talk about the axes inside of our 3D space here, and what we might also refer to as the grid. So if you see this grid down here, it's dealing with axes. We have three primary axes. We have the x-axis, we have the y-axis, and we have the z-axis. So the x-axis is going to deal with our side-to-side movement, and it's going to be indicated in red. The y is going to have our up and down movements, and it's going to be located in green, or in this case, yellow, because I have it selected, but I'll put green next to it. Whichever one of these arrows you're clicked onto, it changes yellow. So you'll notice that there. I'll go ahead and add the colors here. So this one's going to be red. And then finally, your z-axis. Z is often referred to as Z. So if you're ever watching other tutorials, you may hear the term Z used. This is going to be your forward and backwards movement in terms of 3D space. So that will be indicated by blue. Now, green, red, and blue is the universal colors for 3D, so it doesn't matter if you're inside of Maya or another 3D program. Generally, those are going to be what green, red, and blue represent. And later on, when you get into a little bit more complex things, the green, red, and blue also represent the X, Y, and Z channels, all right? So X, Y, and Z is the same as saying red, green, and blue in many respects. You'll also notice they correlate over here to translate X, Y, and Z, and that's going to be how we move. Now, these arrows will move you purely in that axis. So let's say I wanted to move this cube up. I could click the arrow up and drag here, and you'll see I'm moving this up and down. Now, notice while I do this over in the channel box, the value for translate Y is changing. And that's because the channel box is tracking its location on the 3D grid. Now, let's say I wanted to move it side to side. I could click on the red arrow to move it side to side. And let's say I wanted to move it forward and backwards. I could click the blue arrow to move it forward and backwards. So you'll see that is going to allow me to move that purely along those axes. Now, in addition to being able to use the move tool, we can actually just type in values into the cube channel box here. So let's say I wanted to translate 10 units, I could click on the Translate X channel box input here, type 10 for 10, and hit enter, and you'll be able to see the object move to the 10 location on the grid. Now, if I want to reset it to the center, I could do something called zeroing it out, which is essentially hitting 0 into the X, 0 into the Y, and 0 into the Z. And that's going to return us to the center of the world there. So that would be the concept of zeroing out. The last thing I want to talk about with the move tool here is going to be these little squares. These little squares allow you to move between axes, and they move between the two axes they're situated in. So let's say I grab this square here that my cursor's hovered over, and I move along here. This is going to be between the X and Z axes. So it's going to be flat on the ground. Let's say I grab this here. This is going to be between the Y and X. So that'll be moving up and down and sideways. Let's say I'm grabbing here, that'll be between Z and Y. I don't use these often, if ever. They're good for scene placement, but vast majority of the time for precise movement, You grab the axes you want to move in and you drag. All right, so that's going to be the move tool. Let's go ahead and zero this out. A quick way to zero this out is to click to the first value, shift click to the last over here, hit 0, and then type enter. And that will go ahead and do that quickly. The next tool to talk about is going to be the rotate tool, which you can access here. This is going to be the rotate. It looks like a circle with a square on it. And if we go ahead and click on this, you'll see that we gain a new gizmo that looks something like this. You'll notice some similarities, but quite a bit of differences here, where we have the red line, we have the blue line, we have the green line. Those are representing the axes once again for X, Y, and Z. What's different here is rather than pulling this along those, it's going to spin it along it. So what it does is it revolves around that axis. A great example is to look at Y. With Y, you essentially have this arrow sticking around here. And when we rotate this in Y, it's going to spin it. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's grab the green line here, which is Y, and we can just click that and drag it. And you'll see as I do that, this is going to rotate side to side. All right, so I'm just clicking and dragging and rotating. And you can see how that rotation is occurring. You'll see that you kind of have to move in a circle if you want to get that circular motion, but we can see that revolving, and we can see a value going in rotate Y. Now, translates work on position data, meaning where they're located in the scene, whereas rotates are simply based on degrees. So that'll come into play later when animating, because you can do spins. But when it comes to modeling, you have common angles, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 90 degrees that you see a lot. Other things like 180 degrees to flip it the other direction, or 360 degrees to return it to the beginning. Okay, so good to know. But you'll see you can grab any of these handles to perform this operation. Now, the final one is this blue handle here. This blue handle is a very interesting one, which is rotate based on camera position. So as you crank this dial, it's going to rotate X, Y, and Z relative to your camera. So it's going to make your camera that center area that it revolves around. This is very useful for scene block out and just kind of placing things in scene if you need to kind of match a reference. But it's not very useful outside of that. But at times it can be a useful lifesaver. So let's go ahead and zero these out. I'm going to click on the translate X, shift click down to Z, hit 0, and click enter. And that's going to return this back to the beginning. The final movement tool to take a look at is going to be our scale tool, which is located here. And it looks like a box getting slightly bigger inside of a bigger box. The scale is a very interesting concept because it's not something we have in real life. So move, rotate, okay, those are things we can understand in real life. But when you get into the scale tool, it's going to be responsible for making things bigger and smaller, as well as stretching them. With the scale tool, just like with the other ones, you have your Y-axis, which is going to stretch this upwards, your X-axis, which will stretch it sideways, and your Z-axis, which will stretch its depth. If we go ahead and use one of these by itself, you'll see it stretches in the direction that we click. So you can see that there. Now, if you want to stretch a little bit more, you can actually click off and just keep using the tool. So you can see I'm clicking off and redoing it, clicking off, redoing it. Okay, that's an easy way to do it. You can also change your camera to have more screen real estate. Same with X, you can see we can stretch this, and Z, we can stretch this. Now, you'll notice it's no longer a cube. We've turned it into a rectangular shape. So this is a great tool for just kind of shaping and blocking in forms. It can also be used to make something bigger or smaller, and this is one of the unique aspects of this tool, but at the center here, we have something called uniform scale. So what uniform scale does is it will scale all of the axes relative to each other. What that means is it makes it larger or smaller, but maintains its shape. So using the X, Y, and Z individually stretches the object out, but using the uniform scale at the center allows us to make it bigger or smaller. So if I go ahead and click that center dial here, I can increase the size of this, or I can decrease the size of it. And you'll see it stays relative to the other sizes. Like the translate tool, we also have the dual axes here, which is very interesting to look at, but not very practical for precision. So once again, it does the same thing. It's going to scale along both those axes together. The scale is also unique because when it comes to resetting this, let's say we want to get back to a cube, we don't zero it out. If you come over here and you zero this out, you'll see that our cube kind of disappears. And that's because something can't have a zero scale. You can think of scale as an aspect ratio, like 1:1, 1:2 type thing, or in this particular case, a percentage. And that's the better way to think about it. So if you have something that's one, it's its original form. To reset it would be to set it to 1. That's the start point. That's where it begins. Going beneath 1 into decimal points makes it smaller, and going above 1 makes it larger in multiplicatives. So right now, this is 17 times its original size. All right. So that's the idea there with scale. So now that we've taken a look at these, we're ready to start using them in interesting ways. But to really get into using them, let's talk about the hotkeys. These have specific hotkeys to them. W is going to be the move hotkey. E is going to be the rotate hotkey. And R is going to be the scale hotkey. You can remember it as were. That's what I like to remember it as. And if you want to throw an interesting one on top, we can actually throw Q on top, which is the default select tool we started in. That's this arrow one here. So let's say you wanted to select things without moving, you could use Q to do so. So let's go ahead and practice this. Let's go ahead and click off of this object. We're currently on the scale tool. Let's go ahead and press Q to switch to the select. Let's click on the cube and switch to W to move it. And let's move it to a different spot. Doesn't matter where, you can move it wherever you like. Let's switch to E to rotate it. And we can go ahead and click in axes here to rotate it specifically. Or if you want, you can actually click in this area here to kind of free tumble it. I forgot to mention that with the rotate, but if you click between the lines, that's kind of a hidden category. The ball you see is actually free tumble. It's a little bit different than camera orient. All right, but yeah, we can go ahead and click there. We can access that. And then finally, let's hit R and let's just go ahead and give this a bit of scale and some shape. And then maybe we'll make it a bit bigger to take up more space on our screen. And now we've used all the hotkeys. So W, E, R, if you throw in Q, Q, W, E, R, those are going to be the hotkeys for the main tools we're going to be using for menu. Q for select, W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. Let's go ahead and discuss opening and saving files, and then we're going to go ahead and do an exercise to help you master the W, E, and R tools for moving.